effective altruism Toronto is different now due to COVID, due to going online, and I empathize with Dan and with, I imagine, many of us who are still adjusting, even months, even almost a year after COVID really hit North America and Canada, still adjusting to that. And again, just sort of building up something in me that wants to reach out to y'all and get into discussion, talk about events. So I did that. I really wanted to just do something. So last week I did something, tried to talk about the journey I've been on over the last 10 months. I've been doing a lot of Buddhism to contrast and compare with effective altruism, a lot of meditation. And basically, I just had a health issue that sort of prevented me from actually connecting with people getting into discussion last week. So this week, it seems important to address that directly, behaviorally, by just giving a short presentation on why I think well-being is so important for effective altruists and for pretty much everyone now more than ever with COVID, with a lot of mental health, physical health issues around, and to talk about the importance of that in specific relationship with effective altruism. Cool. So I'm just going to launch into this now. So titled the event Defending Our Well-Being, because I wanted to make it clear that that well-being is important. And I think often I find myself not demonstrating this, not able to show in my own life how well-being is important. So this event, I hope to learn from you all how you see well-being and how it has become important for you over the last 10, 11 months and going forward. And especially how well-being has become important for you in relationship with doing good, with effective altruism or other efforts you've taken on to do good. So a bit about my journey with the importance of well-being and effective altruism. So I've been doing effective altruism community building for about 3 years. And after the first year or so, it became evident that some people in the community were really wanting more resources on well-being. So I just hosted a workshop, kind of like this one, except in person. And it was just beautiful to see people connecting, like a bunch of people interested in effective altruism, connecting with each other, but about something that's more universal, because we all have bodies, all have minds, and it's important to keep these healthy, to keep this going, so that we can do the work we need to do. And I think effective altruism in particular is at risk of creating the mentality that the world is sort of on fire. The world is sort of under threat of existential risks, catastrophic risks, biorisks, COVID, artificial intelligence. A bunch of stuff is happening, and people around the world are suffering. People around the world are facing difficulties right now, not just because of COVID, because of many reasons. So the way I put it is the world's sort of on fire. And personally, this sort of often pushes me to want to help others when I am not putting on my own oxygen mask first, so to speak. And that's the first point that I really like to just push home, is that I encourage you all to look at parts of your work now and your life and ask yourself, am I putting on my own oxygen mask first? Am I acknowledging that I'm vulnerable? I'm part of the world. I'm vulnerable to suffering, to stress, to losing the position I have to help others if I'm not careful to sort of put myself first, at least in that way, putting on my own oxygen mask first. So that's the first point. Second point is in my journey with regard to effective altruism, I think and before this, there was like this vague sense of like, oh, I really want to like help others. I want to help others be happy. And I've seen myself as a very happy person. But after doing a lot of the Buddhism meditation stuff I've been doing over the last 10 months, I really questioned what happiness is. And when I look back, I think there's been a lot of sort of, I don't know if I want to call it like delusion in my life, but basically a lot of saying I'm happy, but not actually being free of anguish, free of stress, free of deeper, darker parts of life. Like in university, I would sort of label myself as happy commonly. I'd like, sometimes I would even fill out questionnaires, do psychology classes, and I'd like give myself very high ratings on happiness scales and be like, oh, this must prove that I'm extremely happy. But nowadays, I'm just constantly investigating with meditation, with other tools, what it really means to be happy. And for me, how I think this relates to effective altruism, I want everyone to sort of check in with what happiness means for them, and whether they're sort of flourishing already, and whether that's something that naturally attracts other people to sort of want to share in that. Because I think one risk of effective altruism is that we see ourselves as like, we know it's best. Or speaking for myself, after doing, the first year or two of community building, I sort of had imprinted on me like that effective altruism was right, that effective altruism was like almost infallible. I just became kind of like sloppy with my epistemology. And despite connecting with very helpful folks in the rationalist community who sort of helped me on my journey and challenged me, I think I still ended up being like fairly dogmatic about a lot of things. And I just sort of was like, I'm happy. The world should be happy like I am. We should provide interventions to people. We should fund interventions just to get people to a place of well-being that's similar to me. Whereas now, my exposure to Buddhism has shown me that, oh wow, a lot of people have very different definitions of happiness, very different experiences of well-being, very different parts of their life that I might call suffering, that someone else might see as like extremely meaningful, extremely important to flourishing. So I guess the first point I want to make is like making sure we're okay, putting on our own oxygen mask first. The second point I want to make is like understanding what that oxygen mask is for different people, what well-being really means for people, and making sure that in the work we do as effective altruists or otherwise, that we're providing resources to people in the way that is best for them, and not just something that sort of suits a specific group of people, a limited group of people. Yeah. So that's point number 2. And point number 3, final point, is how do we actually do well-being? What does well-being mean for me? And what do I want to propose that well-being means for y'all? Well, I think of it as complex, and I'm going to boil it down to 4 pillars. So one of them is physical health, making sure we have enough sleep, enough food, and that our bodies feel really good. Noticing that we have energy, questioning whether we have as much energy as we could have, trying to build that energy. That's the first pillar, physical. Second is emotional. Feeling happy is one thing. It's another thing to feel sort of clear emotionally, to feel more deeply sort of freed of patterns, stress, agitation, anxiety. Uh, yeah, these emotional parts that often take a lot of work to clean up using different practices with other friends, therapy. Yeah, for many years I thought of myself as extremely emotionally healthy, and then I found out, oh wow, there are still lots of things to resolve here. Yeah. So physical, emotional. Next one is cognitive. I think this is something effective altruists are particularly strong in, ensuring our cognitive health, ensuring that we're keeping our brains working, that we're learning, that we're taking on challenges, that we're growing in that way, that we're staying stimulated in that way. And then finally, as a kind of health, I think it's important, especially with COVID, to see that social engagement, I see it as like a pillar of health itself. That the relationships we have with other people, both the deep, close, strong ties, friends and family, but also just having a network, having meetings like this to go to, is a form of health, a measure of health. The connection we might feel there matters deeply to our health. And we can practice these just by paying attention every day, every couple of days, noticing if I'm physically well, noticing if I'm emotionally well, noticing if I'm cognitively well, noticing if I'm socially well. Yeah, so those are just a few thoughts I have on well-being, what it means to effective altruist, to defend our well-being. And yeah, that's my short talk for tonight. So now I'd like to just open things up more widely for discussion. Very interested in hearing how different people have faced and overcome challenges of well-being in their own life. I'm also happy to share more stories, more experiences from mine. And yeah, very happy to just have totally free discussion. Anything that relates to the talk or relates to the topic for you. Yeah. And if not, then I'll start pestering y'all with questions.
Yeah, Colin, interesting. I was gonna say something back to your point about putting on your own oxygen mask first. I think we should really separate generosity or like altruism from lack of self-love or self-love deficit. If you can say, I feel like, yes, that example that you gave us is very immediate. You'll die if you don't put your oxygen mask. But usually we don't die, we just suffer. And yeah, I was going to say that with altruism, one really important thing is that the intentions behind it are pure. But I'd say, someone who doesn't take care of themselves, let's say, and they suffer from lack of self-love, and they do things for other people, but the intentions are not exactly pure there because they are expecting, to get some love back or whatever. So that's just something that came to my mind when you mentioned that, but interesting.
Oh yeah, I really appreciate your share.
I mean, my share is just that I've had both a health issue and like problems in a romantic relationship, and like between them, I just feel that they set me back several years in terms of like what I'm doing with my life, how I'm progressing with everything that I want to do, and that includes altruistic stuff. And it's yeah, it's a real thing. If you don't look after yourself, even if you don't die, you can still be in just a not a good place where you're not able to do things productively, you're not able to make progress, you're not able to expand your interests, you're not able to do all of that. So, yeah, I definitely agree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still lingering with Sarah's share as well, maybe tying it to Giles's. That I know for me, I've gotten into times in my life where there are patterns where I sort of, yeah, I really want to help other people. Like it becomes almost a part of my well-being, and I think I'm now seeing this as like a destabilizing thing in my life, something not particularly healthy, to like want so badly to like help others, to like put my work, put my days towards this goal, and sort of judging myself against standards that are very, very high, so to speak, that for me have like, yeah, sort of put me out of commission for hours, days, longer.
So I'm sort of still in that position of, trying to incorporate various pieces of advice I've gotten about self-care and about concentrating on your own well-being. But I always sort of worry that there's too much temptation to become selfish, to sort of, oh, there's a thing that I could do and I should do it, but I think that I need rest or something. Like if there's a trade-off, I really want to, push myself as hard as I can to do the thing that I think is best. And I don't know, I'm not sure where to draw a Schelling point, perhaps is the right word, for when am I concentrating on myself too much and not enough? And so I just sort of stick with concentrate on myself as little as I can manage, and sort of only when you can't manage it are you allowed to really put your needs above your desire to be responsible for all the things you feel you have to do in the world. And I don't think that's perfect, but I don't know sort of where else to draw the line.
Why? Like, why would you do that?
Do what?
Like, why would you make that choice to not do anything for yourself unless you absolutely have to?
Well, I guess it's that I don't have a reliable way to distinguish between, taking care, like helping oneself. Okay, when there is a trade-off between doing the things that you want to do, sleeping more, taking time to relax, thinking about, putting a lot of effort into things that are sort of make me feel fuller as a person, then there are things that I've like chosen to do, like doing well in work, doing well in various, volunteering responsibilities that I've taken on. And I don't want to do a bad job there. And so when there's a trade-off, it feels, I can't tell if I'm taking care of myself or if I'm being lazy. The two feel intertwined in my mind. And I imagine there's a difference, but I don't trust myself to see the difference, maybe.
Yeah, if I can reiterate back. So it sounds like you're having trouble telling the difference between what is good for you and what is just being lazy, like indulgent or something.
Yeah, that's
like indulgent versus helpful.
Yeah.
Someone asked what a Schelling point was.
Oh, it's where you sort of draw a line so that you can sort of tell when you're there and it's agreed upon and you won't break it, as opposed to if you don't decide where the line is, then it'll just end up sort of where it ends up without any care. So if you break a Schelling point, you want to like fix a new one to make sure you don't just not even think about it. It's good.
Like a demarcation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so would an example of that be like with, I don't know, like sleeping or something, where you just find yourself like sleeping, I don't know, just taking naps all the time and you're like, okay, this is getting unreasonable at this point. Like I'm just taking a lot of naps. Maybe I can limit myself to like, I don't know, 1 hour napping per day?
I mean, so more specifically for me, it's about sort of staying up until, 4 in the morning, because I feel like if I don't get enough work done today, then I'll let down the people that I'm doing this work for, right? Like, people are counting on me, and so if I could be well rested or just get more work done, I lean towards get more work done. And if I didn't, I'd feel lazy. Yeah.
So is that like your demarcation line? Like, do the things so that I don't feel lazy?
Yeah, I guess don't be lazy unless you really can't manage to do otherwise, as opposed to get sort of, if I can stay up an extra hour and keep working, then I don't think, oh, but this will have negative consequences down the line, right? So unless I'll actually like not be able to get any more work done tonight, I sort of, yeah, I guess that's my demarcation.
Do you like find the point where where it's gonna start being negative utility?
Yeah, where I sort of short-term need to think about myself in order to be effective, as opposed to thinking about repercussions tomorrow or next week.
Yeah, I just want to read out what Yoni says, just to include him in the conversation. So that resonates with me a lot. Yoni saying this. That resonates a lot with me, Logan. I also have a lot of issues drawing the line. Sometimes the dichotomy is crystal clear. Unfortunately, that's only some of the time. Only progress I've made to improve my discernment has been through experimentation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a pretty rationalist perspective, which I can definitely appreciate.
I mean, you can always go masso on the laziness and say that if you're being lazy all the time, that could be regarded as kind of a failure in terms of the emotional health. So it's like, by being too lazy, you're actually not taking care of yourself because you're letting yourself be lazy. And on the other hand, if you're working too hard, then you're not taking care of yourself either. So yeah, it's about finding the balance, and it doesn't mean always doing the thing which seems lazy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
For me, I think it's more about like the laziness or whatever is like a chronic problem. So it's like a long period of things. So like the perspective I think that's been talked about now is a very like in the moment trying to differentiate versus like, hey, how does the system work? Like let's look at this as like a thing where I have laziness and I have things I want to do and altruism and self-care, and like let's come up with a system that works and test it against reality.
Yes, a way I like see I think this may relate to the system for me, which is seeing myself as having like a limited amount of resources and energy, and noticing if I'm like staying up late, working or whatnot, is that, am I like sort of, I'm going to pay a cost for it tomorrow. And if I do that enough days, it's sort of like burnout over the week, but also just long term, I sort of keep creating this sort of cycle where I'm building slightly more aversion to work. I'm building more aversion to work. Like I'm building this pattern of like working late and pushing myself. Whereas I feel if I'm working late, but if I'm in like a flow state, like I'm really just digging the work, enjoying it thoroughly, then I find I'm not sort of like pushing past any limit. There's less aversion there, and this sort of pattern doesn't form. So it's like for me, it's kind of like being in tune, being attuned to how I'm feeling in the moment relates to the larger system of well-being, and whether I'm gonna like end up hating my work in like a couple months. Yeah, which is less relevant for me these days because I'm at a place where I have a very regular schedule. We're working late at night, I'm pretty much limited to like reading and doing quiet activities. It's supposed to work. Mm-hmm.
For me, I find that the part of myself that like wants to, you know, relax and have fun and like not work too hard, that part is going to like find a way to express itself no matter how hard I try to fight it. Like if I try to fight it too hard and I try to just like be productive all of the time and just try and get work done and not set time aside to relax, like that part of myself is just going to like interrupt when I'm trying to get work done and like just go and like browse Reddit for 30 minutes instead of like doing what I want to do. And it'll just make it harder for me to achieve my actual goals. And the like activities that it engages in to like get that break or that relaxation will be like really low quality, like recreational activities that I don't actually like get any lasting value from. It'll be like, you know, just mindlessly browsing the internet or something. Whereas if I like, I'm somewhat more intentional about my like relaxation time, I could like, you know, spend an hour in the evening like reading a book or something. And it's, you know, restful, but it's also like behavior that I like endorse and find valuable. So I think like trying to come to more of like a like agreement or like negotiation with like that part of myself and like giving it, setting time aside for that, like seems like a win-win. That doesn't mean it's still hard to do it sometimes. Like I'm still trying to find that balance of like how much time to give it.
I like that. It's really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of problems with sort of chronic laziness in the past and still, and I don't know what the answer is, but it's not quite as simple as just trying to do more stuff. It's like if I try and pile more things in, then it will sort of bounce back and then I'll be lazy again. So I don't know what the answer is, but I'm definitely open to suggestions. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine. So one model I guess I formed about my laziness and about energy and how those relate with well-being is sort of like taking on rigorous schedules and taking on personal challenges and personal experiments to sort of just build my capacity, like a mild bit of comfort each day for like months. I've found has just completely changed how I orient to things like eating properly. Like, can I like plan this out? Can I eat really well for, you know, this amount of time, you know, take on a reasonable challenge to just do this one thing like really, really, really well. And then it sort of becomes automatic and becomes easy after a while. So I'm wondering if others have had these sort of little experiments people have run that may be of use to us. Or anything else. Oh, Yoni, I'll just keep reading. Yeah, I like reading out. Yoni, is that cool? Just keep reading out your responses, Yoni. Yeah, dope. Yeah. So it says one thing that also helps me is having someone else who can observe my behaviors and give a warning signal when I might be overdoing it in either direction. Mm-hmm.
Like outsourcing your sanity. I think we've been calling that.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be someone who you trust and you're close to, because if not, it's someone you can avoid, then it's like, well, if I have an accountability buddy and I know that I'm not keeping up with my tasks, then I'm just going to avoid interacting with them, and then it sort of falls apart. So.
Yeah, unavoidable or like automatic sounds like a very important criteria. Yeah. I'd say another one is like automatic or as easy as possible. If you naturally interact with someone regularly, like can you enlist them to also like care more about your well-being and you care more about theirs and just sort of like deliberately practice that skill, that awareness together. Yeah, I'm also curious if there are any other topics that are really alive for people, maybe wider, regarding effective altruism and well-being. Any other things that have come up? Yeah, feel free to open it back up to a wider topic, if you like.
Sorry, I'm curious whether like EA in particular has been a source of, you know, a sink of well-being for people, a source of pressure and discomfort. Like I just speaking for myself, I think I've been definitely in the past in situations that I don't know are maybe a little somewhat similar to what Colin has found himself in, that just having been exposed to EA and those ideas is a source of pressure where you're constantly thinking, am I doing the right thing? And it's very paralyzing. And that then is even more frustrating. And just coming across people having, you know, I'm gonna paste into the chat this this Twitter thread that I came across the other day. I put it on Facebook too for the other event. And I thought it was so interesting. It's like, oh, there's other people like me that have the same experience, that you know, there's that word totalizing, like EA is this very totalizing thing where, which is actually weirdly enough, very different from the rationalist sort of very Bayesian and uncertain experience, which, you know, it should be. And yet you come across EA and it is this nerd snipe and it's all these ideas and you feel like, oh, it's actually very clear what needs to be done. And I don't know, I find that very stressful. And I'm still struggling with it because obviously EAA is the right thing and the ideas are great, but you don't want to burn out and you do have to see the bigger picture. And yeah, I don't know.
Oh, I'm really appreciating you share, Sebastian. Yeah, definitely a lot of resonance, a lot of like agreement. Yeah, a lot of like calling out like parts of what I felt. Yeah, and also something that came to mind that seems related is like playfulness. I think like, yeah, with rationality, I found there's more of like an open space to sort of experiment, explore, think. But in EA, I almost want to call it like a sort of like seriousness, like no playing around. We need to get to business. We need to do these things. We need to stop COVID. Like that reminds me again of my like world's on fire metaphor. Like, no, the world's on fire. Like, it's very serious. But I think without playfulness, without space, without freedom, it can just be sort of like heavy and crippling and suffocating and rigid. And I don't think it has to be that way. But for some reason, it seems like there's this pattern. And I know I can relate to that. Yeah, I'm curious if others also have something coming up.
Yeah, I noticed that with like the CEA, where they're very like focusing on high productive individuals. So it's very like, you know, top 20% of people matter and like nobody else does. And so there's like a very like strong sense of like you have to be there or else you just don't matter. Which I find very, like, I think that adds to the pressure.
That is so true. Yeah. Also, the material coming out of 80,000 hours, I think, is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about this very abstractly, but I'm thinking about like, if there's a niche for like EA, the kind of top-down, like, we know best kind of cult, and like, if you're not one of the top 10% or whatever, you don't matter and all the rest. If there's a niche for that thing existing, then it will exist, even if it's not the thing that we want. And like, it's a lot of the ideas overlap with what we do want. And I think all the people individually wouldn't want it to be that way. But yeah, you can definitely imagine a world where there's a niche for that kind of structure to exist, and therefore, sort of when the EA ideas come up, that's what gets filled. Does that make any sense to anyone?
Like it's like an emergent property that will always be there.
Yeah, like the sort of like taking care of your own well-being's first side of EA that Colin's been talking about. It's like it follows from the principles of EA, but it doesn't follow in a way that's like really, really obvious as soon as you first hear them. Like what's more obvious is like, oh my God, the world's on fire, we need to do stuff, we need to work as hard as we can, all the rest. And like, or what follows most obviously, and it's like that's what the structures kind of build themselves around, is like the strongest idea rather than the idea that's actually necessarily the most helpful.
So it's like people just sort of see the big fires and then immediately run to that versus like.
Well, the big fires and the fact that there's something you can do about them. Like if you can convince yourself there's something you can do, then it's fine. You can just ignore them. But it's like as soon as there is something that you could potentially do, then they become a problem. They become your problem, sort of thing.
Yeah, something clicked when you said it can become your problem. Like there's almost a sense in which I felt like a pull on my identity from effective altruism, and it's been hard for me to see this. If any of you sort of know, like David Yu, I think he's been very aware of this for like years, and it's taken me a while to feel it. Yeah, and I heard that yesterday from Sebastian, which excites me. I'm curious if you have more. Yeah.
You know, like now that you say that, Giles, I wonder if that's perhaps where really Schelling points would be useful, that especially for people who are new to all of these ideas, there's sort of, you get exposed to them and you get very excited, right, about all of what's out there, but there's no limit to the expectation that is being put on you. It's like, now I've been exposed to it, now I sort of have to solve these problems, like, and I have to solve all of them. Like, it'd be really nice, just now thinking about it, if someone had said, okay, you know, like, this is where you are in life. If you can like get this much done, then you're already doing more than could ever be expected of you. And that's great. And like, you know, and beyond that, just worry about having a good life. But nobody's ever said that. It's like, okay, like I know I have to solve AI safety, biosecurity, climate change, all of it. I have to solve these things like by myself. And I only have like however many decades left. That's what it feels like, right?
I mean, people have said that. There was a Slate Star Codex post about like infinite debts, and how if you have an infinite debt, you're never going to actually repay it and you're never going to try. But if you can like convince yourself that the debt is finite and that like by doing so much you've done enough, then you might actually do it.
Guys, I'm sorry, I gotta run. I got a work call now.
All right.
But I was really sad.
Yeah, good to see you, Daniel.
Take care, Daniel. Bye, friend. Yeah, infinite debts. Oh
yeah,
my.
You're right. That is a good point. That is a good point. But I don't know. Just the fact that I haven't, like, you know, I wasn't thinking of that right now. Like, I feel like that should be more central.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree with you guys. There is definitely a sense of urgency and a kind of seriousness that comes with altruism. And this reminds me of a podcast that I listened to with Sam Harris and William MacAskill. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with him. He's, yeah. And the whole podcast was on this topic. How much should we give, you know? And I think that William mentioned that he gives away 2/3 of his yearly income. which is astonishing to me. I can never like imagine doing that. But yeah, and like how it depends on a number of factors. People that have kids, they have people that they need to support. It's different for them, and so it is a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like everyone, yeah, connecting that to like the indebtedness thing is still like ringing for me, and how, yeah, there's this part of EA that seems like, oh my God, there's so many problems, the world's on fire, you can just be like constantly like infinitely working, but how this looks so different for different people, different resources, different, but yeah, how that looks for families. Yeah, especially.
Yoni wrote something?
Yes. Yes, we should. Would you like to read it out, Sebastian?
Yoni says, for me, whenever I've been part of a community, irrespective of being in EA or not, I've found it helpful to question whether the pervasive path, quote unquote, fits my own makeup, my life situation, etc. Times in the past where I've tried too hard to conform, it's bitten me in the end. Yeah, for sure. I agree. Which brings me to a question, Colin, and I don't know, maybe if this is difficult to answer, I understand. You said earlier that, you know, as you've explored Buddhism more and meditation more, you've realized that some of the things that you thought would be the kind of happiness that we should be pushing onto the world as EAs are not actually as universal as they seem. Do you have like a particular example of that? Like something where you thought that's the kind of happiness that everyone should have, and now you realize maybe it's not that clear cut?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's still, the examples are still sort of like, yeah, I don't know how much weight I want to like put on them, but one that comes to mind is EA strikes me as very global. And for years I was like, oh, if I have to have an impact, it has to be like massive, like global, like strategic, technological, like all these things. And I think what just community and Buddhism has shown me is that the way impact often happens is actually very personal, through personal relationships. And this can often feed for many people. And of course, this looks different for different people. I'm sure there are lots and lots of people who really strongly just come alive with global wanting to like have a reach, have an impact in the lives of people who they'll never meet. But there's another way to have impact in the lives of people you'll never meet, which is, I think, just by really lifting up yourself and the people you know. I think that's sort of what I've been. I think a part of me has like seen the importance of this in my own calling to EA community building, and there is this other part of me nagging that like, oh, we need to do more. We need to like push out more value and resources to the world. And while that is like true, it would be amazing to like help globally, I think it's like perhaps overly ambitious. So yeah, so to more specifically answer your question, I think like the kind of EA happiness that I thought was important in the past was this sort of like needing to have this massive global impact, or at least be working on like massive global problems. And now what I see is you can actually work on the generators of those problems, like for instance human greed. That would be a long description for me to describe how human greed relates to a lot of the problems that we're involved with today. But for instance, you can imagine like climate change. Like, why does climate change happen? Well, it's because we use a lot of resources. And how we can work on this just by like really finding our well-being through not consuming a shitload of resources, through being like deeply happy in a way that is less harmful, and trying to like change that culturally within a small group of people can sort of spread out. Yeah, I think before I would have thought this was like an illusion that that wouldn't have an impact, that that wouldn't make sense. But now I see this as like potentially a very sustainable path, a very EA, a very effective path to having an impact if we can sort of change culture in a way that is like sustainable, reproducible, scalable. Yeah. Does that answer? And I'm curious if others have answers as well.
Good answer. Thank you.
I mean, there's a certain arrogance in assuming that you can have a much bigger impact than a typical person, much bigger positive impact than a typical person who's trying to would. And the question is like, how much is that arrogance justified in different domains? And like a lot of people are interested in climate change. A lot of people are interested in like changing people's behaviors around like getting them to consume less. And you're sort of joining that crowd of people who are already doing that. So, you know, it's less neglected in the EA framework. But I'm sure Colin has a response to this. I'm just kind of setting the stage for him a bit.
Yeah. Oh, please, someone. Yeah. Did I hear another voice? Or should I jump on another child's? Okay. Yeah. This is another thing that's sort of been like morphing and shifting for me. Just sort of how to think of those EA cause evaluation frameworks, the scalable problem, the neglectedness, and also the solvability and the tractability. And I think for me, there has been, I think for like at least 2 years, I've just been trying to figure out what solvability and tractability actually means, because it seems to mean a different thing for every cause area. So like one definition of it is that if you like put in a bunch of, let's say, there's a specific way to talk about it, but if you put in like, I don't know, 100, you doubled I don't know. I don't remember the specific thing 80,000 hours uses. I should put a link. But
yeah, it's kind of like if you double the resources going into it, you end up with a problem half the size or what? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So with things like that in mind, it just seemed insufficient to me, because problems also grow in size. And I don't think like the ways EAs have looked at tractability take into account just how really, really damn hard problems are to solve, and how this can feed back into, I'm kind of just blathering on about things that I haven't looked into in a while. But basically what I want to say is if you take climate change, I think this problem, I should be more specific, and I'm not being specific now. So I think I'm going to shut up for a few minutes.
I mean, I was challenging you on the neglectedness, not on the tractability.
On the tractability.
All right, Yoni has to run. He says thanks for the talk and discussion. Colin, everyone.
Yeah. Appreciate you, Yoni. Bye-bye. Yeah, I think my part of how I want to address concerns about neglectedness are by looking at the whole framework, and I just would need to, I don't know, crystallize more of my thinking on this before like trying to present it here. I'll say that there's like a vague discomfort.
The reason I'm challenging you is not because I want you to look silly, but because like if I'm wrong in my understanding of how neglectedness works in this framework, then like it could be huge. I could like completely change my mindset on a lot of important issues. So it's you're someone I respect, and you seem to have come to a different conclusion to the one I would have expected when it comes to climate change. And I'm just sort of, it's got me very curious. But if if there's more like work and formalizing and thinking that needs to go into it, that's fine. I'm not expecting a nice packaged answer just now.
Yeah. I think one thing that might help shed light on this is how I've been trying to incorporate more systems thinking into how I see EA work. And I think this is neglected in EA to apply sort of thinking about feedback loops, for example, though there are many different areas and tools available in systems thinking. And basically, I think I view climate change differently now because I see it as connected to a lot of issues of like migration and food systems and social unrest and just the mentality people take as like using the environment as a resource being like versus being like stewards of the environment. Like I think this also relates to you know, how we sort of commercialize animals, getting into factor. Basically, I think like I see a lot of cause areas as more connected now, and part of like, and I see the solution to them as like part of a wider shift in mindset. And I see EA interventions as like targeting narrow things that don't seem to affect systems as a whole. So I think my response to concerns about neglectedness and other parts of the frameworks are more so like criticisms of the wider framework themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it might be that the reason something is neglected is that it doesn't really matter and that you're just sort of holding on the wrong lever, and that everybody else is actually sort of knows what they're doing. So, yeah.
So that's the tractability thing then, right? Like, I don't know, maybe Colin, you can speak a little bit more to what the long-term plans are, if you know of any, to make this kind of thing scale to a systems level. Because, you know, as you said, like if you work in a very narrow area, you're going into one particular field of industry or one particular field of science, whether it's biotech or whatever it is, and then you're just making changes within that very narrow field versus actually changing the whole system. And particularly with things like culture and meditation and a different mindset, the people who need it the most are the people who are going to be more like the most resistant to it, or the farthest away currently from the ones that are going to go and join a monastery, right? It's a very wicked kind of problem.
Yeah, this definitely, for me, like steers my interest. Yeah, I'm curious if other people have thoughts as well. But for me, this steers my interest more towards things to say about effective altruism and Buddhism. And yeah, I'm tempted to throw out this like big tangent, which is like a lot of the problems, and I sort of hinted at it already, but I think a lot of the problems effective altruists want to solve are part of big systems, and those systems are sustained by culture, by institutions, by individuals. So an example would be AI safety, very big problem in the eyes of a lot of effective altruists. What is actually driving the sort of rush, the competitive development of AI, which may result in deployment of unsafe technology? So I think a lot of EAs have looked at this as the problem of how do we make safe AI, whereas I look at it now more as the problem of like, why are people racing to develop unsafe technologies, of which AI is one of them? And the way I see this rolling out, it sounds like a very deep oversimplification, but the idea being like, why are people doing this? It seems related to something like human excitedness, maybe arrogance, maybe creativity, maybe greed. Something like, why does Google exist? Why is Google developing AI like crazy? Why is Baidu developing AI like Like, why is the US government, Chinese government, other governments developing AI at a rate that is I think considered by many EAs scary. Like looking at GTP3, the specific system, it's AI, which I do not understand. I just know of its implications. One of them, some of them relate to, basically being able to change messaging, online communications, like being able to generate news articles that seem very convincing. For instance, generate research seems very, I'm no expert on implications of such things. But basically, my question is like, why do people generate these things in the first place? What is causing these problems? And I see that as related to, things like human motivations, like greed. So if there's no way to change those, if there's no way to change that root, if that is the root, if my analysis is making sense, like at the end of the day, I think people like care about values, intentions, things that matter to them, which are really important. Like people care about their families, so they go to Google and they will work at Google. But is there a way to care about your family while not working at a company? I'm not saying Google's evil, but I'm saying that, that we should be careful where we're putting our money, our lives, our efforts, our careers. So that's a pretty wild tangent. If anybody wants to bring it back to well-being or respond to this, or just, let's just hear what's alive for people
now. I mean, how it, trying to tie it back to well-being, like, it's basically, what I'm hearing you say is sort of don't discount your sort of your own feelings and judgments about like what's good and bad in the world. So if like if Google seems a bit big and a bit scary, then like maybe there's something there that's telling you that like, oh, like maybe the culture is wrong there and like something can be done about it, rather than like, oh, we have to like fight it and make a bigger Google that's good and not evil. And I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say, but like it's emotionally easier if you can trust that most people who are not EAs are working on something useful and like working on what they should be. And the EA mindset can tend to lead towards like everyone who isn't an EA is kind of wasting their time. And that's like, to tie it back to well-being, like obviously it's a very arrogant position, but like to tie it back to well-being, it's also like not emotionally healthy, because it's like anyone who isn't in this very small in-group suddenly becomes the out-group, and like it can start to feel lonely, and like you start to sort of maybe your non-EA friendships sort of suffer because of it and all the rest. So that didn't have
definitely saw the connection.
But if that didn't have to do with the AI part of it, but it has to do with like the kind of systems thinking and like not putting like all the weight on neglectedness if you're not sure that you're actually solving the right problem and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I loved and I sort of saw the connection to well-being there as well. And sort of, I appreciate you voicing that. Yeah, and it seems like a good idea now to just create space for any other thing that's really alive for people in the area of well-being or some other discussion topic. We can definitely maintain this thread that we've been on, but yeah, maybe now's a good time to just be like, is there anything else people are curious about that you're looking to voice tonight, looking to get out of tonight, or offer that is sort of calling?
I mean, I do have another thought on the AI thing, which has to do with like believing that you can change people's minds and you can change cultures, at least within, like, changing human nature sounds like maybe a bit daunting, but like if you take an institution like Google, then like, I don't know, there are people there whose minds you can change. You can maybe change the culture a bit. Like it's not a complete non-starter. But because like the nature of AI tends to, at least at the moment, it's sort of centralizing power a bit. Like the institutions that have access to that technology and have access to the funding have a lot of power in terms of like which technologies they choose to develop and which ones they don't. And yeah, so it's not a question of just trying to change the whole of human nature. It's a question of like which organizations can Logan had to drop out. What can we do about what can we do about powerful organizations rather than what can we do about human nature as a whole? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What kind of accelerators are there for that kind of work, culture changing work? Like I can think of psychedelics, and I'm curious how you guys feel about it. I don't know. What else? What other levers are there to pull on? Changing the voting system might have a small effect. I don't know. Any ideas?
Colin wants everybody to meditate.
Yeah, we need a new religion. We need like Buddhism combined with other things 2.0 to like make everybody like really happy, and so happy that they like don't incentivize, I don't know, whatever decision making leads to corporations harming the world directly through environmental destruction, or harming the world indirectly through working on unsafe technology. Yeah, everyone meditate. there's actually a lot more that's, yeah, I guess that now feels like an alignment. Oh yeah, is there more, Sebastian?
No, I guess I'm like, it's I don't want to push back too hard on it. I'm just wondering, because I'm all for it. Like I'm 100% sold on this. I'm just wondering, this has been like both meditation, Buddhism, other wisdom traditions have been around for so long. What's the expectation that like this time around it'll actually succeed in growing to a large enough scale? Like why now? Why do you think 2020 is the decade of?
Yeah, personally, I think this stuff probably won't succeed. I don't think it'll work, but I've come to see it as almost the only option, just because of what I've seen in my own behavior and how that relates to a lot of like EA issues. Like, I don't know, like Giles's question about big corporations, like are there ways we can deal with that? Run big corporations differently, put pressure on them politically, socially. Like, I don't really know how to approach that without looking at humans more individually, without looking at culture more individually, without trying to cause sort of mindset shifts, without trying to redefine leadership as with new paradigms. That so basically, I'm spending some time with Narayan. Some of you may know our friend Narayan, and he's very interested in something called the Post-Growth Institute, and in looking at not-for-profits, especially looking at not-for-profit businesses, looking at businesses that are businesses that are basically built to not have shareholders and investors and a profit incentive, but businesses that are built to take all their profit and feed it right back into the mission, so that they're run in a leaner way. And how changing something like that, creating a still very competitive sort of new institution like that, may be able to change the culture of business as a whole. And like an essential part of that is like talking about leadership differently. Because when profit is no longer the sort of driving factor of I think we might have someone else joining in. We'll see. Yeah, when profit is no longer the sort of core motivator for corporations, there's more accountability, more visibility, more care about the purpose of organizations. Yeah, there's a lot more that we said about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my question would be like, if an organization isn't motivated by profit, it's still going to be motivated by the need to exist, because the organizations that don't stop existing. And that need to exist can become sort of an end in itself. And I'm not sure that this new kind of structure is immune to that effect, or if it's even going to be lessened.
Yeah, I would hope it would be lessened. I think the sort of like not-for-profit business and argument, and probably other work at the Post-Growth Institute, relies on the argument that more attention would be paid to things like that. Like, oh, if the purpose of the organization, or if this organization just seems to be running in a way to sort of perpetuate, to sort of serve the people who are already part of the organization, this would be more like clear and obvious when compared to other organizations that are clearly not doing that, that are clearly operating on some sort of purpose or mission beyond that. But I am not entirely sure that would actually happen, that would actually ring true. And a big caveat around all this stuff that I've just mentioned about not-for-profit business is that all the people theorizing about this and researching this in the world, because this already exists in many places, a lot of people see this as like necessary. They see it as like important for these to exist, for these businesses and institutions to exist, but they don't see it as like sufficient. They don't see it as like powerful enough to actually change a lot of big problems, world systems, but just as sort of like a balance to some things, like a balance to the destruction of the environment. Just having organizations that really care about the environment, that are balancing. Yeah, maybe a few, maybe a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about economics, and I don't know about like changing people's behavior. Like, they're just not things that I've studied. And yeah, you can have this feeling that you sort of need to be an expert at everything in order to, not only in order to know what to prioritize, but in order to know what approach to take in order to start prioritizing things. And actually, this ties back to the well-being thing, because
yes.
If you either try and do it all yourself, or you start outsourcing all your thinking to other people and like, oh, we'll just do whatever the Center for Effective Altruism is saying is a good thing this week. and neither of those seem particularly healthy. Like the first one can be sort of burnout and like pressure, and like you're spending all this overhead of like trying to figure everything out, and like, yeah, having to be an expert in everything. And then the other thing is like maybe sort of socially and emotionally less healthy, that like you're losing a bit of your agency just by saying, well, all right, these people make the decisions, and then these people decide where the funding comes from, and then these people decide where the funding is going, and then like I'm just sort of a cog in this big machine. And there must be a happy middle, but I don't know. Do you think there's a happy middle?
Yeah, now might be a time.
Point to the triangle, or whichever way you want to visualize it.
I'm not sure I understood the last thing you said.
Or a third point on the triangle. Like, it may be two ends of a spectrum when you're trying to find a point in the middle, or it may be like I've described two roads and you want to find something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel called to now invoke my like fiery Buddhism answer to like this question and many other questions in well-being, which is that I've found Buddhism to be it cares about well-being like a lot. Like that's the center of Buddhism in many of ways, to end our own vulnerability to suffering. Like this is in some ways the center of Buddhism. But another part of Buddhism is to end to realize our sort of non-separateness from other beings, and to end suffering for all beings. And of course, there's a lot more like padding on this framework I could give. But basically, I see this as related to what's coming up now with this sense of like, oh, EA's. If I'm in EA, do I have to like literally do everything? Do I have to like literally solve the problems in the world and become master of all these disciplines? Do I have to just be a cog in a machine? I think like for me, taking this more Buddhist way of seeing things, it's like a constant step, like tiny steps on a path towards doing the impossible thing, and like knowing that you're failing. Like every step you take is like an end in itself, and also realizing that like your mission is like infinite. Like I think the Buddhists have like spent very large amounts of time like trying to answer this very like issue of like, how can I actually do what the world seems to call from me? How can I actually answer this question that I think EAs are trying to answer? Yeah. So I don't know if that lands.
The stuff has been talking in the chat. I don't know if you want to address that.
Oh wow. Yes. Thank you, Giles. Would you like your words to be read out, Mustafa? Or shall I just read them?
Hi. I mean, I guess everyone can read them, so you don't really need to. But yeah, it's just something which just came in my mind, and like it's something which I am really like when I mentioned Zen philosophy per se, is because like I also think along the lines of how like I've been thinking along those lines, how self-improvement has to be done, but how will that align to philosophy of Zen or anything where less is more in a way, and how you are able to so I just wanted to hear out your perspective on this and all. But yeah
I'm happy to attempt to answer that curiosity. I appreciate you bring that. My sense of things, like very directly related to my own experience of EA and well-being, is that problems seem to compound. So when I first got interested in effective altruism, it was like, oh wow, I've been looking at the world in such a narrow way. I've been looking at the world through the lens of like my own skills and through a few local problems. But now I realize there are massive global problems that are enacted on a local level as well, that can be dealt with on a local level. And that there's so many different ways to categorize the problems, to think of the problems. And this kind of compounding of complexity, for me, the thing I've found to balance it over the last 10 months is through the meditation, through living in community, through practices that are related to Zen, because it is the one thing I found that allows me to put all that complexity down in rest, so that the next day or the next moment even, I can pick it all back up again with a sort of freshness, with like a vigor, with energy, with clarity, as opposed to just having it sort of like eat away at my life and sort of latch on to my identity. Yeah. So I feel like I'm speaking kind of like abstractly and personally at the same time. So I'm curious if this is like landing, answering your question, Mustafa, or if others like to chime in.
I have another question. Mustafa just says thanks. I have another question, which is about sort of individualism and individuality, and like both in like broader Western culture and like in EA itself, it's like there's a temptation very much to see like yourself as an individual, and like what matters is like what you do when you're trying to do the best for yourself, or like in EA or trying to do best, it's still you doing the best for other people. And like I realized sort of just after saying it that that dichotomy I gave between like being a cog in the machine versus like trying to shoulder everything yourself, like it's sort of coming from the perspective of being an individual. And I'm just wondering, like, what's your take on that? Like, is individualism still really, really good? Is it more complex? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, I love that you see that and brought that in. And I a part of me is like more curious just to see like what's at stake for you. I definitely do want to answer your question, but I'm curious if there's more there about how you see that, how you see what's at stake for, yeah. Does that make sense?
Just that like being part of a community that I can actually trust, not just to be a good community, but to like actually like we do all of our thinking and come up with our ideas together and like make decisions together, and like that affects what happens. Like it's it seems both like that it can be very liberating and also kind of scary, that it's like, yeah, what happens if the community does turn out to be a disaster, and like they're now making their decisions for me, and like, yeah. And I think there's like either a big or a small mindset shift that maybe I still need to go through, as to like how can that sort of mutual relationship between the self and the community and the wider society and the world sort of evolve and develop in a way that's healthy, and like tying that back to well-being, obviously. But yeah, that's sort of where this question is coming from.
Oh, I really love that. I love that because it like ties into how I see things and how I think I would have, how I want to answer that part of your question, which is that I think one way for EA to work really, really well to get the well-being and to get the mission going is to have this sort of more extreme accountability. But with that rigor, the rigorous side of accountability, also have like the care side of accountability, the trust side of accountability, which I think not just Buddhism, but so many religions, or you want to call it that, cultures around the world, that have different, more sort of structural, dogmatic, fundamental religious sides, but also have more like spiritual, explorational, mystic sides. I think a lot of these cultures, spiritual communities around the world somehow manage to come up with forms of community and forms of leadership that give you both, individualism and collective. Yeah, I feel like I'm speaking really abstractly here. So I'll try to make it concrete by saying, in my experience at Willow, as part of this monastic academy thing, what I found is that the training here shows me that what I do every day affects other people. It really matters. And I currently live with other affected people who are in effective altruism with Yuli, and Rana's here for a bit, and sort of keeping each other accountable to keep working towards the things we want to work on has just been like right there, very present every day. The rigor has been present, but also the sense of care we have for each other has been present. The accountability for care and for rigor. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing about having like a central leader who everyone looks up to at the same time is accountable. Like, strong leadership can have like disadvantages that like people can trust the leader too much, and like, or like whatever the leader says goes, and like, but my thought here was not so much around that. It's more that kind of EA sort of has the worst of both worlds, that it has a little bit of that top-down feeling, but at the same time it doesn't have the accountability. So you get a sense that there are these like central bodies that are issuing commands and telling us what to do. But like if some of it's not working out, there isn't like one specific person you can pin the blame on and say like, it's your fault, Peter Singer, or something like that. It's like, no, it's like this organization, but this organization is kind of part of this organization. Anyway, it didn't come from here. And like, maybe it was just like some random blog post he misunderstood and like all the rest of it. And do you sort of, does that maybe resonate a bit?
I can tell you it resonates with me. That's exactly how I feel. Thank you.
Yeah, I find that beautiful. Find, yeah, what you said to be haunting. Yeah.
But I mean, accountability is like, it's hard, and like this has to do with well-being as well, because if one person chooses to be like, the buck stops here, then they're going to suddenly be under a lot of pressure. If they're already entering a system that's like not completely dysfunctional, but a little bit, then there's going to be a lot of bucks that are going to stop there all of a sudden. And yeah, so yeah, I don't know how you feel about that one, Colin.
Yeah, just your characterization of EA as like in some ways the worst of both worlds, with like the top down and the lack of that, just like is like sort of sticking with me. Just like that characterization is sort of I'm imagining ways to try to do things differently for EA and for others, where like culturally accountability is served in a different way and valued in a different way. Like what can we offer each other, whether it's just in this video call or in other events or online or through some other, like what can we offer each other to like do the accountability thing? So like what can we offer each other in terms of care? What can we offer each other in terms of rigor? Like, are there tiny things that we can actually do? Again, that's a question we can ask individually. It's a question we can ask communally to hopefully address this like cultural EA thing. And I think that also, in a sense, just like if we to the degree that we do that, sort of makes us capable of I want to say being like competitive or proactive responsive to more like top-down, more like big network-wide effective altruism updates and initiatives and ideas. Yeah.
I like the sound of some of that. I'm not completely sure I followed. Like, part of what I heard was that, like, by focusing on the local Toronto EA community and, like, we can try and sort our own house out, and then, like, maybe some of that culture will spread, or, like, maybe we'll be learning from others as well as, like, spreading whatever we develop that turns out to be good. But I feel like you're saying more than just that.
Yeah, I guess I'm still just sort of playing around with a lot of the ideas, and I think, yeah, I think that's what you said is like a big part of it. I'm just sort of speaking to what I see as the like what that dynamic of like getting Toronto, getting our house in order would lead to in terms of like trusting each other more, or in terms of the work we can do. Yeah.
What do you think that kind of a conversation would even look like? Like, absent someone who really is a leader of some sort with some sort of legitimacy behind him, and I don't even know where that would come from. It's difficult, right? Like, is there a constitution that we can write that you either adhere to if you call yourself an EA or not? Or is there, like, the story in the back of my mind, right, is this whole controversy, the whole like race IQ thing that was kind of on the fringes of the rationality, you know, scene, those blogs. I'm sure you've heard stories that left a bad taste in people's mouths, I think, about a lot of rationality and things that are adjacent to it, which is a shame. And there was nobody there who said, you know, I'm the one who can draw a line here and say, this is too far. And so it kind of just lingered as a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Do you elect people? I don't know. How do you see this happening? It is a problem, I think. Just the lack of structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way I see it now is really, it relates to practices that each of us, like one way to approach it is just to look at like practices we could develop as a community that would sort of change our culture, that would change our sense making as effective altruism Toronto. So for instance, we're just having this event. Maybe there's a different format event that we could do that would sort of maybe just having an event on well-being will sort of ripple in some way. I don't know. Or just having, or maybe I could put more like joyous energy into like you folks, like Giles, Sebastian, Sarah. Like, what events would bring you to life? Like, what? Like, how can we just foster that kind of engaging culture?
I mean, I've been enjoying this one a lot. Like I've had quite a lot to say for myself, and I don't always. So it's obviously like sort of stirred up some things within me, and yeah, I definitely appreciate that. In terms of what else, well, nothing immediately springs to mind. It's like this question about how to reform EA Toronto, and like that seems to go a lot further than just the well-being topic, and it's probably something we've each thought a lot about. I'm not sure if it deserves like an event or if it's just an ongoing theme or what, but yeah. And yeah, I'm sure well-being will have a part to play in that. I'm sure Buddhism will have a part to play in that. I'm sure other things we haven't thought of yet will have a part to play in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think now, because of my journey over the last 10 or so months, I'm like renewed and more excited about just hearing you ask that question. Like, how do we reform EA Toronto, or another way to phrase it, be like, how can we build EA Toronto, or what do we want to like see in EA Toronto? I think in the past, I've just like failed to see the importance of like each individual who is part of the community asking that question, and that alone as a practice, as a kind of, I'll just drop the term psychotechnology, this sort of like, kind of like, it introduces a new language, it introduces a new way of thinking when we sort of celebrate that. Like when I can sort of celebrate you for asking that question, and just having it as a normal part of events, like talking authentically about how we're liking the event, and what kind of events we might like to have in the future, and maybe things beyond events, maybe more one-on-ones, more accountability, meetings, groups, channels, things we'd like to build together. There's a lot of space, and I think it's kind of like a self-organizing thing that's just maybe starting or restarting now. We'll see.
Yeah, like I'm sort of interested in how to like organize a network of one-on-ones and make sure that they carry on happening, because they are valuable. But it doesn't always self-organize, and if it doesn't, like I definitely haven't been taking the lead on that myself. I haven't been having one-on-ones with people, and like maybe I should, but yeah.
I imagine one way to like approach that is just by, I'm curious if there's anything maybe that tonight's topic, tonight's discussion, for any of you, that you think will lead to some sort of behavioral change, especially one that you'd like support for, or if it's leading to some other. I guess what I really wanted to point to with your response, Giles, was like, is there a way for us right now in this meeting or in other meetings to like help support everyone, individuals like yourself, to just be like overflowing with something, with energy, with excitement, with EA vibes, I don't know, but just be sort of contagious with vigor for a project like one-on-ones, like organizing that, or like organizing speaker series, or like AI safety, just whatever, yeah. Also, really
that's a really good
Sebastian's
question. I'm going to have to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I get the sense that, I mean, from life in general, but from EA in particular, that there are at least two levels the conversation can be at. And it can be at a very surface level, where you're just sort of spreading around the EA memes that you've all heard already, or like maybe someone hasn't heard them and you're explaining it to them, but like nothing new happens. And then there's the level of like, now we're actually talking about stuff, and we're actually like feeling stuff, and we're actually like sort of putting together ideas that have never been put together before. And this event, for me at least, managed to dip below that surface layer into the second layer. And it's something that I would want to happen. I want it to be the norm rather than the exception. And like whether other people agree with me that that's what happened this evening, I'm not sure, but yeah.
I think this was really valuable. Like I'm grateful to COVID insofar as the EA Toronto meetings are now online, so I can still join once in a while. No, I think this is great. This is really nice.
I agree. I really enjoyed myself. I'm sorry I've been a little quiet, and I don't mean to be like overly pessimistic, but when it comes to changing the culture, I'm just not very, I guess, no. This culture is so difficult. I think it's almost not feasible, but maybe it's just me. But yeah, I really like that, hearing other people's ideas, and I'm looking forward to our next meetup.
Yeah, I'm feeling very like warmed by like everyone's sort of like shares, by like I'll say like the positive, like I almost feel like surprised because I imagine events are very different. Yeah, there's sort of like a putting myself out, like, yeah, putting something out there and not knowing. Yeah, I guess it's like going back to well-being, like the self-critical voice. Like, can we do this? Can we change the culture? Can we talk about well-being in a way that changes people's minds? And there's like just hearing that you folks have found value in this event. I'm looking forward to more stuff that goes to the deeper layers. Yeah, it sounds like I'm like, oh, I'm glad we're doing this. And yeah, definitely for me, I feel that even just talking about these things, even taking the small steps word by word, I think I used to doubt the importance of it more. I used to doubt whether it was good enough, whether it was EA enough, whether it was working. And I think because of the meditation and other things, I have a more confidence, a clearer sense that like, oh, it actually is working. Like based on hearing those shares from y'all, I have a sense that something is happening. And of course, we could be more specific about what that is. We could investigate that more. I encourage y'all, encourage myself too, to investigate more like what came up in this meeting, what we'd like to bring forward to future meetings, what we'd like to bring forward to our lives. Yeah, it's gotten me sort of like excited. Something's happening.
No, you're absolutely right. I also, just a random thought. I often think that like because EA is only around 10 years old-ish as sort of a community. And I think most of, or at least as far as I've been able to see, most of the people in the community found out about it through the internet, through their university, meaning they're probably all in their 20s, early 30s. And we're sort of all kind of in the same age group. And I wonder how the philosophy and people's thinking will change just as we all age and grow up.
Oh,
just man. For that reason alone.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, there's a diversity problem in AA, and like people have talked about it before, and like the age group thing is part of that. Yeah. So. But as you say, like the age group thing will eventually maybe fix itself as long as people don't like all leave EA at the age of 40. But
yeah,
become like parents or rich businessmen or whatever else it is that people do when they become middle-aged. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think this community, whether it's Effective Altruism Toronto or the wider Effective Altruism community or a lot of communities, are kind of like a cohort in some sense. Like I remember seeing some data from surveys, the Effective Altruism surveys, and like, oh, there's like this mean age, and it just keep like it just keeps getting like 1 year older per year, which is like which is basically saying that like it seems like the movement started and really impacted like a specific group of people at a specific time, and it's changing a bit, but not that well, at least from that survey data, from what I remember. But it'll be very interesting to see how that changes, how the demographic changes, as well as to examine deeper your question, Sebastian, about how EA changes, how all the individuals change in their own lives, getting older, getting just different concerns coming up for them personally, socially, physically, cognitively, emotionally, all these different things, and seeing how that feeds back into the wider culture, the wider movement.
I had a thought, like, and it has to do with one-on-ones. Do you find that, like, talking about diversity and like people who are sort of visibly different and like visibly different from like people who look like us and like people who are older counters that. Do you find it's easier engaging with people who within the EA community are a minority than one-on-one than like in a Zoom call where like they can see that like suddenly they're the odd one out?
Oh, this is a very interesting topic for me because I've struggled with this for so many years, and because this is another thing that's just absolutely changed in the last 10 months for me, and how I see it. Yeah, I'll just jump in and just continue and say how I see it is that if we, each of us individually, is able to feel welcome and show up in whatever context, and also be seen by other people, to be acknowledged and be seen by other people, and feel that, then that will probably be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, factors for ensuring a healthy, welcoming, accessible community. And that, I imagine, will be like a big lead measure. Like if you can measure that, that'll be a big lead measure, a big indicator of whether the diversity issue of EA, the fact that surveys have shown that I think EA is like somewhere like 85 to 90% white, I think 70 or so percent male. I think that might have changed a tiny bit over the years, but still probably, that's a huge problem. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is, well, I think it's a huge problem. And that just being able to like really, communicate with people in a different way, such that people feel seen, feel heard, feel welcome, feel able to show up, would be accepting to anybody of all ages. And that I think like this training that I've been doing, this like sort of, it's not necessarily just the Buddhism, but also there's a practice called circling, related to something called authentic relating, which is a wider categorization of things, which I think some of y'all may be familiar with. I used to be like, what the hell is this stuff? What is this circling? What is authentic relating? What is the point of it? I don't get it. Am I doing it right? I'm not doing it right. What's happening? And now I see it as almost fundamental to building loving communities. To say that like, if you want to be in a loving, welcoming community where diversity issues are sort of like automatically solved just by the way people show up, which is extremely hard, which I don't know if anyone has actually like perfectly solved this, but if you want to make progress on that, then it's like at the level of the way we communicate, at the level of the way we engage with others, at the way we notice particular things. Like circling is a practice of just sort of like meditating. That's how I see it now, like meditating with other people, except you have your eyes open, and it's not really about meditation. It's about using the awareness of your body and your mind, using the awareness of others to honor truth and honor connection. So being able to build the skills where, say, someone comes to the meeting, an older person comes to the meeting, being able to build that skill of like, oh, I'm noticing I feel disconnected from this person. or I'm noticing this person's body language or voice or whatever it is, or some vague sense that they seem disconnected. And there's like some discomfort around that. Being able to like notice that in the moment, acknowledge that and work with that. Yeah. As like a way to, yeah, please.
That's a good answer, because like the sort of backup strategy that I think we can fall back on is like, someone's joined the call, they're visibly different from the rest of us, and we all kind of like panic a bit of like, oh, we need to keep this person, otherwise we're not going to increase diversity quotient. And
yeah,
that's not going to help, but it's like you need some other strategy instead. And like what you were saying about like, how do we each individually feel welcome and make each other feel welcome is going to extend to newcomers as well. So, and like I probably feel as welcome here as anyone, because I've been around here for young, since before there was an EATO. And there are still times where I feel like, oh, I don't really have anything useful to say here. Like people talk about things and it's not really my thing. And like some of that awkwardness that you talked about, like not in that context, but like in a different context maybe, like it still goes on. And like it goes on, but I'm not sure I'm sort of fully aware of it and fully experience either. So yeah.
Oh, appreciate that.
Do you think this is something that can be adapted to Zoom at all?
People do circling over Zoom, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, if you look up More Authentic Relating Toronto, you have to pay for their events, but I'm pretty sure they still have them. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Do you think EA Toronto would be ready for that kind of thing? I've never participated in it.
Vaguely touched on it in the past, haven't we?
Yeah, vaguely. I also don't know that it needs to be like so explicit. I think it can be more implicit. Yeah, like I can tell you that there are many things in the conversation that I've done that I can like look back that I'll say like the only reason I did that thing was because I've already developed this pattern of like behaving as I would in this circling practice and this authentic relating practice. And I totally wasn't doing that before. And just really like emphasizing what Val said that really resonated with me. Like it's so hard to even notice these things. Like, can I even notice these things? Can I notice when I'm more connected, when I'm leaning in, when I'm pulling back, when I'm feeling more disconnected? Can I notice if there's like a tension in the room? Can I actually speak to that tension without just dumping it on someone else? Like, can I be vulnerable and share about myself and my own emotions? And yeah, I think this is something that is like very hard, that will take like a long time for any individual, let alone a community, let alone a culture to like develop. But it's also like super contagious. Like if we all here, or whoever's interested, just like sort of take this as like a point of curiosity to check how I'm feeling like connected to people in the room, and just practice this. I think it changes so much. It's almost terrifying. Well, it actually is viscerally terrifying, because I've been doing this community building thing for a while and I was lacking this. And I was like, oh shit. Oh no, it's actually really important. It's really important to like, this is how to do it. This is how to make people feel welcome. Yeah, to just maintain that awareness and speak to it. Yeah, I mean, I can get really circly if you guys want.
I love it.
Like something, there's a lot of theory around it, but it's also a practice, and like it's something you can just do. So if you think it might help, you can give it a try, and like maybe it'll help. So.
Yeah. Okay. I've tempted to get really circly now as an experiment. So, also we're 6 minutes past 9, and I just wanted to acknowledge for logistical reasons that we're 6 minutes past 9, and this event was listed as 2 hours. So if anybody is feeling any like pressure to stay, I encourage you to relieve that and leave. but also just saying that I'm really enjoying being here with y'all. Yeah, and then I plan to get really circly in like 30 seconds. just to be like,
I like at some point, but I want to see Colin being really circly.
So what I mean by being really circly is just acting with certain principles in mind, guiding my behavior. So the first one of those that I'll introduce to you all right now is just committing to connection. Committing to connection. So how I've been using that in this call and how I'm using it right now is by like constantly checking in with Giles, with Sebastian, with Sarah, with myself, and being like, am I connected? Like, am I thinking of y'all? Am I like interested in y'all? Am I curious about y'all? Do I care about y'all? And if the answer is yes, then it's like, great, I'm in connection. And if the answer is no, then it's not. Yeah. So here's like the fun, delicate part where I would imagine. So here's me attempting to be circular. So I'm noticing a sort of like fluttering in my heart, in my chest, where, and I think it's been with me for a while, and I think it's related to a discomfort I have, like a question I have about whether you all are like comfortable with how I'm showing up. I think it's specifically relating to Sarah, because you've had your video sort of like off, and I'm like, oh, am I making you feel like I want you to feel comfortable, whether your video is on or off, whether you're talking or not, to just be in the room. So there's a bit of discomfort for me around how to like handle that, how to make you all feel welcome.
I feel very comfortable and welcome, Colin. You did a great job. And it's just me, you know, like, yeah, it's late, you know, and I was lying down and I didn't want to have my video. And I'm the only girl here. So a combination of different factors, but it's not you. I felt very connected too.
Aw, I really love your sharing that, and just the energy, the fact that it's late, but you're still showing up with lots of like energy, and that I can see like Sebastian's like smile in response, and some other. Yeah, and also just naming that fact that at many EA meetings, I think that's how I used to have this awkwardness and this fear around like, oh my God, if someone's the only girl or the only like non-white person, like what do? I have to do something. And I think there used to be like a fear there, as opposed to like, oh no, this is just another human being. This is just another human being, and as long as I try to like care about each individual person and sort of bring them in some way and help them feel comfortable, then I don't actually have to do anything. I don't actually have to treat Giles, Smash, and Sarah. I don't have to treat any of you like specially or differently. Just have to sort of like acknowledge and care. And that to me relates right back to well-being. Yeah, that's me being circular. And me also that's just how I like to show up now. This is how I like to communicate with people now.
Yeah, so I didn't really notice the difference from the normal Colin, but I think that's just how you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. There isn't too much of a difference, I don't think. There's just me doing more like meta narrative, more like, here's what I'm doing. Here's why I'm doing. Here's sounds like I could talk about more circling principles, like staying connected with a level of sensation. So like right now, I'm feeling like very sort of, I'm feeling a bit of tension in my back from my posture, but there's like a pretty clear sense of peace. I think there's still like a bit of tension just because I have like a discomfort. I think it's related to a discomfort with video calls. So just relating to that, to my body, just checking back in with my body right now. Like I invite you all, if you're not already, to like sort of check in with your body and notice if there's anything there and what that information is telling you. Like maybe someone else on this call is like related to that. Like maybe you're like curious about someone else, maybe you're like nervous, or maybe it's something unrelated. Maybe you have like a work thing to do, maybe there's an injury. Just noticing the information your body's giving you is another like really powerful thing to do in meetings. It's why I wanted to have this meeting where I fucked up so badly last week by like hearing my body and my body's like panicking. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna ignore you. That did not work out at all. Yeah, so that's a circling principle. It's circling. Is that, yeah, curious if that brings up anything for y'all.
That's also the focusing book that you posted. It's the same idea, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And focusing, in particular, if we use a tool like focusing, we could do even emotional processing, like in the middle of a work meeting or a call, which may sound like crazy. Like, what even is emotional? Basically, like, if something bad happens to me, I could like realize that as attention. I could realize that as like, oh, I'm really like, I'm shrugging now. There's like a lot of tension. Like, I could realize that in the moment. I could analyze that. I could be with that sensation. And I could figure out what it's telling me. And usually at that point, it relaxes. And I could do that in the moment really quickly. And I think it's very hard to do that unless you spend a lot of time meditating, but it's possible. And I kind of want to tell you guys this like story of this like meditator named Shinzen Young. He's a very famous American meditation teacher. He's a total badass. And there's this funny story that I heard about him, which is that one time he's coming out of a workshop and he goes to the parking lot and he realizes his car has been stolen. It takes him a second to actually realize this, but he looks, no, I parked right here. His car has been stolen. And the moment he realizes, he feels this incredible tension come up in his chest, and this pain and this tension, and he feels it moving. He's just paying attention to it. He's watching it. He feels it moving through his arm, and it just leaves his arm. And that's it. And then he just does the next thing. He's just like, oh, I'm going to call a ride. Like he just noticed all the pain, all the suffering, all the fear, all the tension that having your car stolen brought up. And he was just with that. And it just popped right out of his arm. And he just went on with his day. Boom. Yeah. That's my wacky story.
That's cool.
Meditation. And also, that's my wacky story is sort of like a challenge to each of you. If there are more meetings that you're in online or in your day-to-day life, if there are things you feel your body telling you, I invite you to trust those and to listen to those. Yeah, as I so blatantly failed to do last week, but as I've tried to practice over the last 10 months, because I think this will not only improve your effectiveness, improve your ability to relate to other people, but it will improve your well-being. It will make you healthier because you will not carry around traumas and tensions in your body. You'll be able to process them. Yeah, that's my like circle rant. It's my circle dharma talk or whatever. Yeah, my Buddhist talk. Yeah, I'm getting pretty wacky. We're going for like 2 hours.
That was really nice though.
Yeah. How's everyone doing? I kind of want to just like check in with y'all.
What I've been noticing is like, is a feeling it's sort of in my chest and also sort of like outside me, just like a big sort of fuzzy ball. And it's like, it's a kind of like, it's a sort of nice warm feeling. And it's, I associate it with like, just sort of feeling connected with people and also just sort of enjoying the experience of being with people. But it's not all that typical for me. And it's, yeah, I've been, again, coming back to noticing things like I was aware of it before I noticed it sort of thing. As like, oh, this is actually something unusual for me that I'm feeling, so yeah.
And how does it feel to share that with us? Is the sensation changing right now, or do you feel different now that you've told us about that?
Yeah, it's actually, it's going to sound funny. If anything, it's getting less warm and it's kind of a little bit more like concern, like have I overshared? How are people going to react to this? Am I like being too performative? All the rest of it, and like those kinds of concerns are coming up. But yeah, so the feeling I described has dissipated a bit, but I'm not upset about that. So
I'm really glad you shared. I feel really happy because I noticed like a warm, fuzzy ball as well. And yeah, definitely curious if other people have like more body related or circle related or any other shares. Checking things.
I'm mostly noticing that the smile on my face, which is more like a grin. Because this is such a special treat in the age of COVID, I feel like. Just getting together with people, even if it's over Zoom, and I live in a house with 4 other people, so it's not like I'm lonely or starved for interaction, but it's so nice. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good video call when you can forget for a moment they're actually on a video call and just like,
yeah.
Oh man. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Another thing we can do on video calls at any moment is just like meditate. Oh man. So I've been doing this meditation thing for like 10 months. Meditating's like so hard. It's horrible. It's like, why would anyone do it? But now I actually like it. It's taken me like so long, and now it's actually really nice. So if you guys want to like invest 1,000 hours in meditating, I recommend it now. I'm very skeptical before from EA lens and from many other lenses, but like at any moment, yeah, what you just said, like on a video call, but forgetting you're on a video call. What I'd say in that moment is that you're like, I don't know if this is my story about you. I don't know if this is true, but my story is that what is making you forget the video call is that you're connected to something important, which is like relating to other people, or you're connected to your own body sensations, just connected to something beyond the medium, and that is like really damn important. And what meditation is kind of like all about, like remembering what's important, being aware of what's important. Yeah, how's that land? Or yeah,
it resonates a little, like even sort of being connected to an idea, like if I can be absorbed in what I'm talking about or what somebody else is talking about, or like the back and forth, then yeah, the actual medium of communication becomes less salient than the ideas.
Yeah, I'm definitely noticing, I definitely don't want to put any pressure on, but I'm noticing my curiosity sort of like circling back to like Sarah every like couple of seconds.
Yeah,
just wanting to like create.
There is a reason for that. It just occurred to me with your story. It just occurred to me that I probably haven't been doing it right, because I have been meditating for some time now, for well over 2 years, I'd say, and I use the Waking Up app. Yeah, and I have thoughts all the time, every day, all day. So I feel like I should be changing something. And in terms of the sensation, I really need to pee, so I'm distracted. So, but yeah, do you use an app to meditate?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, because I've felt much the same way for like, I've been interested in Buddhism and meditation for like 10 years. And for the entire time, almost the entire time, I was like, am I doing this right? Am I engaging with this properly? And my answer was usually like an unconfident sort of like no. But now it's like so background for you, Sarah. Also, I don't want to like hold you here with my answer if you need to like run away for a minute. But but yeah, my answer is that there's a lot of context behind my answer now. So basically, for the last 10 months, I've been living at a place called Willow Monastic Academy, where we meditate for 2 hours a day, where we eat together, we exercise together. Well, we don't exercise together, actually. We can do whatever the hell we want, go for a run. But yeah, it's basically like a kind of modern monastery thing. So it's very different than everything I had done before. I had done one Vipassana, Goenka, Dhamma, Dharana, any of those words that I'm meaning retreat. I had been interested in Buddhism and used apps or meditation for a long time. And basically I found the thing that was the difference between me doing it like well and not well, or like right and not right, is just having friends to talk about it with. But not just any friends, ones that are sort of like spiritual teachers, ones that really know their shit, really know their meditation. And at Willow, we have someone here. We have a teacher. Her name is Seishin. That's her fancy Buddhist Dharma name. Her English name is Yasna, and she is my friend. She's also my teacher, and she is the reason why I think I'm able to make progress and why I have clarity on meditation questions. Like just hearing your response there, that like thoughts, like you still have a bunch of thoughts. Like for many years, I was like, what is meditation? I'm supposed to stop thinking, right? That's what, no, it's actually thinking's fine. In fact, like in many meditation techniques, there are a lot of different techniques, and most, if not all of those techniques, like in the technique we've just been doing and checking in with our bodies and doing the circling thing, and doing that right now, we are using thinking. We're using thinking to bring our attention back to our body. Like this thought is important. Like for instance, I'm having the thought body, like the word body, or the word feel, or the word back, or back pain, the word back pain. This is thinking that I'm using to redirect my attention and build certain skills, to build concentration, to build sensory clarity, sensory resolution, to also build equanimity. That's like building those three skills. That's my favorite definition of meditation or mindfulness awareness practice that I've gotten from the guy I told the story about, Shinzen Young. That's his definition. So yeah, I could talk for a long time about meditation. I'm really glad you brought it up there.